Welcome to Crime Maze. In this video we are going to talk about 5 unsolved dorm murders. So before starting this video, like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. The university dorm is an important element of the higher education experience, for millions of people throughout the world. Some dorm murders were planned in advance, while others happened on the spur of the moment. Number 5, double murder at CMU. On March 18, 2018, it was just another day at Central Michigan University, a public school with a modest reputation but tens of thousands of students. James Eric Davis Jr., a 20-year-old CMU undergraduate, resembled many of his peers, but unlike many of them, he suffered from a severe mental condition. In fact, on March 17, James was brought to a nearby hospital, after claiming that unidentified assailants were attempting to murder him. Despite being escorted to the hospital by police, Davis managed to flee on foot, but was apprehended and returned. 9. James' parents arrived in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, the next day from suburban Chicago. They intended to return home for spring break with their son. As a result, James, his father James Eric Davis Sr., a part-time police officer, and his mother Diva Jenine Davis spent the morning of March 18 packing on CMU's Campbell Hall's 4th floor. At before 8:30 a.m., James Jr. shot and killed both James Sr. and Diva with his father's revolver. Following the murders, James Jr. conducted a 15-hour manhunt across CMU's campus. Judge Eric Janes of the Isabella County Trial Court ruled on January 25, 2019, that James Jr. was mentally ill at the time of the offense. The defendant pled not guilty by reason of insanity at the same competence hearing. James was eventually declared not guilty due to insanity and will not be prosecuted. Number 4, Professor Murderer. Professor Robert Bechtel of the University of Arizona planned to travel to Pennsylvania for his 50-year class reunion in 2005. Professor Bechtel was a student at Swarthmore College in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, in the mid-1950s. Pennsylvania, in the mid-1950s. Normally, this would be uninteresting to the public. Bechtel, on the other hand, had shot and murdered a fellow student in 1955, and many of his classmates were displeased with the prospect of a murder attending their class reunion. Bechtel went public with his experience, after first notifying the administration at the University of Arizona, where he had been a professor of environmental psychology since 1976. In a nutshell, Bechtel blamed bullying for everything. Bechtel was a 22-year-old student in 1955, and he had the onerous duty of being a dormitory proctor, or RA. It was his job to keep students in line, and students in the 1950s, like today's students, did not take their proctors seriously. To make matters worse, the meek and bookish Bechtel had been the object of bullying since he was 4 years old. Bechtel had had enough of the ongoing disrespect and resolved to take action. He remembered the times when students would urinate on his bed, and leave it out on the school's quad. He also recalled the moments when students would shout, "Bechtel will eat shush tea," as he walked around the hostel. During the 1954-1955 winter vacation, Bechtel returned home and purchased 2 weapons. His aim was to shoot the bullies and silence them for good. That is precisely what Bechtel accomplished. On January 12, 1955, he fatally shot 18-year-old Francis Holmes Strozier in his dorm room, while the alleged bully slept. Bechtel then turned himself into the police after firing 5 shots into a dorm room closet. Bechtel was interviewed by a psychiatrist while incarcerated. The psychiatrist ruled that Bechtel was incurably mad, and the future Arizona professor was sentenced to the Fairview State Hospital for the Criminally Insane for the remainder of his life. He would only be there for 5 years, and after a brief trial, during which he was ruled not guilty due to insanity, Bechtel was released back into civilian life in 1960. Number 3, Super Crazy Boyfriend. Boyfriend of the Year was never going to go to Gregorio Orestita. Orestita was said to be prone to jealousy and wrath in most stories. Orestita was dating 18-year-old Carly Hall in 2015, when she was 19 years old. Orestita frequently accused Hall of being unfaithful, and the relationship was stormy. Orestita's motive for killing Carly on February 8, 2015 was not infidelity. No, a bowl of noodles was the straw that broke the camel's back. Orestita attacked Hall, a freshman at Millersville University in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, while they were both in her dorm room after an altercation over the spilled noodles. Orestita was conducting CPR on the lifeless Hall when paramedics got on the scene. It was then discovered that Hall had been dead for several hours when 911 was dialed. A jury found Orestita guilty of third-degree murder on May 2, 2016. Despite the fact that the jury concluded Orestita had assaulted and strangled Hall to death with malice, they also believed the killing was not premeditated. Judge Donald Totaro agreed with Assistant District Attorney Susan Ellison that Orestita's actions after Hall's death, such as watching rap videos on YouTube right after the strangulation, ignoring knocks on Hall's dorm room door, and blaming Hall for his own actions, reflected a cold and callous personality. For his crime, Gregorio Orestita received the maximum punishment of 20 to 40 years in prison. Number 2, Ice Cold Case. Residents of the all-female Bartlett Hall on the campus of the University of Alaska, Fairbanks, were caught off guard at 2 p.m. on April 26, 1993, when a janitor screamed from one of the dorm's bathrooms. The janitor's panic had a horrific source, as police would eventually discover. Sophie Ann Sergi, a student, was found dead in the bathroom. It didn't take a trained eye to spot her as a homicide victim. Sergi's body was discovered in a semi-private bathroom on the second level with a single bathtub. Sergi was discovered wearing her pants down to her ankles. She'd been shot in the face and stabbed. Sergi's body had been in the bathtub for roughly 13 hours, before being discovered, according to a later autopsy. Sergi, a 20-year-old Pitcairns Point, Alaska native, was sexually abused by her killer, according to the same autopsy. Sergi was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head, which was fired from a .22 caliber weapon. Sergi and her family would have to wait for justice for more than 2 decades. After being detained by the Maine State Police Tactical Team in February 2019, Stephen Harris Downs, a resident of Auburn, Maine, was charged with first-degree murder. Sergi's killer was considered to be either a student or a university employee for years by Alaskan detectives. They also speculated that the killer despised women and had planned the murder ahead of time. One of Downs' former roommates was interrogated by cold case investigators in 2010, and they learned that he had been sacked from his position as a UAF security guard when a gun, a .22 caliber revolver, was discovered in his possession. Between 1992 until 1996, Downs was a student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. He lived in Arizona after that before returning to Maine. He was most recently employed as a nurse in Auburn. Sergi was most likely spotted smoking in the second-floor restroom by Downs. The case has yet to be heard in court. Number 1. The origin of the Clery Act. The Jean Clery Disclosure of Campus Security Policy and Campus Crime Statistics Act, also known as the Clery Act, is a federally enforced statute that requires any institution that participates in federal financial aid programs to maintain and disclose campus crime statistics and security information. Following the death of college student Jean Clery in 1986, this act was signed into law. Jean Clery was intended to attend Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, where she grew up. However, after hearing of the murder of Tulane student Karen Minkin, an 18-year-old co-ed who was strangled to death at her off-campus apartment, her parents, Howard and Connie Clery, had second thoughts. The family toured other institutions after passing on Tulane. Jean fell in love with Bethlehem, Pennsylvania's Lehigh University. Regrettably, Jean would share Karen Minkin's fate. Jean attended to a party a few days after returning to Lehigh from her spring break vacation. Jean, 19, went to bed in her dorm room in Stoughton Hall that night. Joseph Henry, a former sophomore from Newark, New Jersey, entered Stoughton Hall that night by 3 doors pushed open by students using pizza boxes. On the second story, Henry tried a few doors but they were all locked. Jean's was the first door he tested on the 3rd floor. Jean had left it unlocked, because her roommate had departed without taking her room key earlier that day. Joseph was in the process of searching Jean's room when she awoke. Before sodomizing Jean, Joseph cut her in the face with a beer bottle. He strangled the young woman with a piece of wire from a slinky toy to put an end to her life. Following the incident, it was discovered that Joseph, a previous honors student, had been expelled from campus due to his violent behavior. Although many people suspected Henry despised women, he did not have a formal record until 1986. Originally, Joseph Henry was sentenced to death, but his death sentence was overturned in 2002. Henry eventually consented to spend the rest of his life in prison rather than face a second death sentence if he went to trial. The Clery family came to the realization that their daughter's death could have been avoided. They chastised Lehi for lax security protocols and for failing to tell parents and students that Bethlehem's violent crime rate had been steadily increasing for years. What do you think about this video? Which of the following 5 unsolved dorm murders you find most shocking? Do let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.